The security guard at the gate didn't even look up from his crossword puzzle when Major Elena Rodriguez approached the B-21 Raider stealth bomber. "Parts delivery goes to Hangar C," he mumbled, not bothering to check her credentials. "Maintenance entrance is around back." Elena stood there for a moment, her hand resting on the identification badge that clearly displayed her rank, her clearance level, and her specialized training certifications. But the guard saw only what he expected to see: a woman in coveralls, carrying a toolbox, obviously just another technician here to fix something that the real pilots had broken. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. She didn't correct him. After 12 years of this treatment, she'd learned that some battles weren't worth fighting. Not yet. What the guard didn't know was that Major Elena Rodriguez held the highest security clearance in the United States Air Force, possessed advanced degrees in aeronautical engineering and quantum physics, and had more flight hours logged on classified aircraft than any pilot currently stationed at Whiteman Air Force Base. He also didn't know that in exactly 4 hours, she would be the only person standing between national security and complete catastrophe. But that revelation was still hours away. Elena Rodriguez had been 8 years old when she first saw a stealth bomber slice through the Missouri sky like a mechanical phantom. She'd been standing in her grandmother's backyard in Warrensburg, hanging laundry on the line, when the distinctive triangular shadow had passed overhead without making a sound. Her grandmother, Maria Rodriguez, had looked up from her vegetable garden and smiled knowingly. "Mia," she'd said in her soft Spanish accent, "someday you're going to fly one of those." Elena had laughed, the way children do when adults say impossible things. At 8, she was already being told by teachers that girls didn't become pilots, that she should focus on more realistic career goals like nursing or teaching. But Maria Rodriguez had survived the revolution in El Salvador, had raised 6 children as a single mother after her husband died in a factory accident, and had worked 3 jobs to put herself through night school to become a certified translator. She understood better than most that the word impossible was just another obstacle to overcome. "You watch, Mia," Maria had continued, her weathered hands gentle on Elena's shoulders. "The world will try to tell you what you can't do. But your grandfather, he used to say that the sky doesn't care about your gender, only about your courage." Elena's grandfather, Colonel Miguel Rodriguez, had been a pilot in the Salvadoran Air Force before the family immigrated to the United States. He died when Elena was 6, but not before teaching her to identify different aircraft by their silhouettes and explaining the basic principles of aerodynamics using paper airplanes folded from his old military manuals. Maria kept those manuals in a wooden box under her bed, along with Miguel's medals and commendations, written in Spanish and English, testifying to his skill as both a pilot and an instructor. Those childhood memories felt like they belonged to someone else as Elena walked through the corridors of Whiteman Air Force Base at 0600 hours on a Tuesday morning in March. The base was home to the 509th Bomb Wing, the most elite stealth bomber squadron in the world, and Elena had been assigned here for 18 months as part of what her commanding officers called technical support. The official title on her orders was Advanced Systems Analyst, which was military speak for someone who understood the classified technology well enough to fix it when it broke, but not important enough to actually use it. She'd been trying to get reassigned to active flight duty for over a year. Her formal requests had been denied 6 times, each rejection accompanied by bureaucratic language about optimal resource allocation and specialized skill set requirements. The translation was simpler. They needed her to keep the planes running, not to fly them. The irony was suffocating. Elena possessed security clearances that took most officers 5 years to obtain. She'd graduated first in her class from the Air Force Test Pilot School, had completed advanced training in electronic warfare systems, and held certifications in aircraft that didn't officially exist. Her personnel file contained commendations from generals whose names were classified, recommendations from defense contractors whose projects were buried under layers of national security protocols, and performance evaluations that consistently rated her in the top 1% of all Air Force officers. But here at Whiteman, she was invisible. The other pilots knew her as the systems girl, the person they called when their million-dollar avionics equipment malfunctioned or when they needed someone to explain why their radar signatures were showing anomalies. They were polite, professional, and completely dismissive of any suggestion that she might be qualified to do anything more than diagnose their technical problems. Colonel James Mitchell, the wing commander, had made his position clear during her first week at the base. "Rodriguez," he'd said, standing behind his desk with his arms crossed, "you're here because you understand these systems better than anyone else in the Air Force. That's valuable, that's important, and that's where you're needed. Pilots are easy to train. People who can think like you do are rare." It sounded like a compliment, but Elena recognized it for what it really was, a polite way of saying she was too valuable as a technician to risk as a pilot. The military had invested millions of dollars in her specialized training, and they wanted a return on that investment. Her job was to keep the B-21 Raiders operational, not to fly them. The B-21 Raider was the most advanced aircraft ever built, a flying computer wrapped in stealth technology that could penetrate any air defense system in the world. Only 37 pilots in the entire Air Force were certified to fly it, and Elena knew each of their names, their backgrounds, their strengths and weaknesses as aviators. She'd studied their flight patterns, analyzed their mission reports, and spent countless hours reviewing their performance data. She also knew that she was better qualified than at least half of them. Elena's typical day began at 0530 with a review of overnight maintenance reports. The B-21 was so technologically advanced that it required constant monitoring of dozens of interconnected systems, each one capable of failing in ways that could compromise the entire mission. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She'd arrive at the hangar while the base was still dark, coffee in hand, ready to diagnose problems that had stumped teams of engineers working through the night. The aircraft itself was beautiful in the way that only military technology could be beautiful, sleek, purposeful, and absolutely deadly. The B-21's skin was composed of radar-absorbing materials that cost more per square inch than most people earned in a year. Its engines were designed to produce minimal heat signatures. Its electronics were hardened against electromagnetic pulses, and its flight control systems were so advanced that the aircraft could literally fly itself from takeoff to landing without any human intervention. Elena understood every component, every system, every line of code that made the B-21 function. She'd written portions of the diagnostic software herself, had redesigned sections of the avionics architecture to improve performance, and had solved integration problems that had stumped teams of defense contractors. But she'd never been allowed to actually fly the aircraft she knew better than anyone else on the base. The other pilots treated her with the casual respect reserved for competent support staff. Captain David Chun, one of the younger B-21 pilots, would stop by her workstation most mornings to discuss technical issues or to ask her opinion on system modifications. He was friendly, professional, and completely oblivious to the fact that Elena had more flight hours logged on advanced aircraft than he did. "Morning, Rodriguez," Chen would say, settling into the chair beside her desk with his flight suit perfectly pressed and his confidence completely intact. "The navigation system in Raider 7 is showing some drift during high-altitude turns. Any ideas?" Elena would pull up the diagnostic data, analyze the sensor readings, and provide a detailed explanation of the problem along with recommended solutions. Chun would nod appreciatively, thank her for her expertise, and then go fly the mission that she'd just helped make possible. It was a routine that had been repeated hundreds of times over the past 18 months, a professional relationship that reinforced the invisible barriers that kept Elena grounded. She was valuable, she was respected, and she was completely trapped in a role that utilized only a fraction of her capabilities. The frustration was made worse by the fact that Elena genuinely liked most of the pilots she worked with. They weren't intentionally condescending or deliberately sexist. They simply accepted the military hierarchy that placed her in a support role and them in the cockpit. It was the way things had always been, the way things were supposed to be. And questioning that structure would have required them to acknowledge that the system might be fundamentally flawed. Major Sarah Thompson was the only female pilot assigned to the 509th Bomb Wing, and she'd made it clear from the beginning that she had no interest in being Elena's ally. Thompson had fought her way into the cockpit through sheer determination and political skill, and she seemed to view Elena's technical expertise as a threat to her own position. During their few interactions, Thompson had been coolly professional, maintaining the kind of distance that suggested she didn't want to be associated with another woman who might be perceived as challenging the established order. The thing about this job, Thompson had said during one of their rare conversations, is that you have to prove yourself every single day. The moment you start complaining about fairness or asking for special treatment, you lose credibility. I earned my place here by being better than everyone else, not by questioning why there weren't more women in the program. Elena had nodded politely, but she'd recognized the subtext. Thompson was warning her not to rock the boat, not to draw attention to the fact that a highly qualified female officer was being kept out of the cockpit. It was a survival strategy that Elena understood intellectually but couldn't accept emotionally. The technical challenges of maintaining the B-21 fleet were genuinely fascinating, and Elena took pride in her ability to solve problems that stumped other engineers. Each aircraft was essentially a prototype, incorporating technologies that pushed the boundaries of what was possible in aviation. The stealth coatings required constant monitoring and adjustment. The electronic warfare systems needed regular updates to counter new threats, and the flight control computers had to be recalibrated for each mission to ensure optimal performance. Elena's workspace was located in a restricted section of Hangar Bay 12, surrounded by computer terminals, diagnostic equipment, and technical manuals that were classified at levels that required special storage protocols. Her security clearance allowed her access to information that most generals would never see, technical specifications that represented decades of classified research, and operational data that revealed the true capabilities of America's most advanced military aircraft. She'd spent the previous evening reviewing intelligence reports about a new air defense system that had been deployed by a hostile nation. The system represented a significant threat to conventional aircraft, but Elena had identified 3 different ways that the B-21's electronic warfare suite could be modified to defeat it. Her recommendations had been forwarded to the Pentagon, where they would be reviewed by committees and eventually implemented by teams of engineers who would receive credit for her innovations. It was satisfying work, but it wasn't flying. Elena had logged over 2,000 flight hours in various military aircraft, including 400 hours in the B-21's predecessor, the B-2 Spirit. She'd flown combat missions over hostile territory, had conducted test flights of experimental aircraft, and had demonstrated her ability to handle emergency situations that would have challenged the most experienced pilots. But none of that experience seemed to matter when it came to getting assigned to active flight duty at Whiteman. The official explanation was that her technical skills were too valuable to risk in combat operations. The unofficial explanation was that the B-21 program was too high profile and too politically sensitive to experiment with pilots who didn't fit the traditional mold. Elena was a skilled officer, but she was also a woman, a minority, and someone whose background didn't match the established pattern of successful stealth bomber pilots. The pattern was well established: male, white, preferably from a military family, with undergraduate degrees in engineering or mathematics and postgraduate training at prestigious military academies. Elena checked some of those boxes, but not enough of them to be considered a safe choice for such an important program. Her personnel file contained recommendations from 3 different generals, performance evaluations that consistently rated her in the top percentile of all Air Force officers, and commendations for her work on classified projects that had saved taxpayers millions of dollars. But it also contained markers that subtly indicated she was someone who might be perceived as a risk: a woman in a male-dominated field, a first-generation American whose loyalty might be questioned, and an officer whose technical expertise might be seen as threatening to the established hierarchy. Elena had learned to read between the lines of military bureaucracy. Her assignment to Whiteman was presented as a prestigious posting, recognition of her unique qualifications and specialized skills. But she understood it for what it really was: a way of utilizing her talents while keeping her safely away from the cockpit, where she might challenge assumptions about who belonged in the pilot's seat. The morning routine at Whiteman began at 600 with a briefing for all personnel assigned to the B-21 program. Elena would take her seat in the back of the briefing room, notebook in hand, ready to take notes on technical issues that might require her attention. The pilots would sit in the front rows, their flight suits immaculate, their confidence radiating through the room like heat from a jet engine. Colonel Mitchell would review the day's mission requirements, discuss any changes to operational procedures, and highlight any technical concerns that needed to be addressed. Elena would listen carefully, already formulating solutions to problems that hadn't been clearly articulated, identifying potential issues that might arise during the day's operations. After the briefing, the pilots would head to their aircraft for pre-flight inspections, while Elena would return to her workstation to review overnight diagnostic reports. It was a routine that reinforced the division between those who flew and those who maintained, between those who executed missions and those who made missions possible. Elena's workstation was equipped with monitoring systems that provided real-time data on every B-21 aircraft on the base. She could track engine performance, monitor avionics systems, and analyze flight patterns from any mission being conducted anywhere in the world. It was a level of access that few officers possessed, a window into the operational capabilities of America's most advanced military aircraft. She'd become skilled at reading the subtle signs that indicated developing problems, slight variations in engine temperature that suggested bearing wear, minor fluctuations in radar signatures that might indicate coating degradation, or small changes in flight control responses that could signal hydraulic system issues. Her ability to identify these problems before they became critical had saved the Air Force millions of dollars in maintenance costs and had prevented several potentially catastrophic failures. But monitoring systems from the ground wasn't the same as feeling the aircraft respond to your commands, wasn't the same as experiencing the incredible power and precision of the B-21 in flight. Elena had flown simulators countless times, had spent hundreds of hours in training programs that replicated every aspect of B-21 operations, but she'd never been allowed to actually pilot the aircraft during a real mission. The simulators were perfect replicas of the B-21's cockpit, complete with authentic controls, realistic displays, and accurate flight dynamics. Elena had achieved perfect scores on every simulated mission, had demonstrated her ability to handle emergency situations that would challenge the most experienced pilots, and had shown that she could execute complex missions with the precision and skill that the B-21 program demanded. But simulator time didn't count toward flight certification, and perfect scores in training didn't translate to actual flight assignments. Elena's frustration was compounded by the fact that she genuinely loved the work she was doing. The B-21 represented the pinnacle of aviation technology, and being involved in its development and maintenance was professionally satisfying in ways that few jobs could match. She was contributing to national security, working with technologies that were decades ahead of anything available to civilian aviation, and solving problems that pushed the boundaries of what was possible in aerospace engineering. But she was also watching other officers fly missions that she was better qualified to execute, seeing pilots struggle with technical issues that she could have prevented, and knowing that her skills were being underutilized in ways that diminished both her potential and the effectiveness of the overall program. The social dynamics at Whiteman were complex and often frustrating. Elena was respected as a technical expert, but she was also seen as someone who occupied a clearly defined role that didn't include aspirations for advancement into flight operations. Her colleagues were friendly and professional, but they also maintained a subtle distance that reinforced the boundaries between support staff and operational personnel. Captain Lisa Park, one of the newer pilots, had arrived at Whiteman 6 months earlier with minimal experience in advanced aircraft. Elena had spent weeks training her on the B-21 systems, explaining the intricacies of stealth technology, and helping her understand the complex interactions between different components. Park was intelligent, dedicated, and completely unaware that her instructor was more qualified to fly the aircraft than she was. "I don't know how you keep track of all this technical stuff," Park had said during one of their training sessions, gesturing at the complex displays showing system status. "Information. I can barely remember which button controls what, and you understand how everything works together." Elena had smiled and explained that understanding the systems was essential for effective flight operations, that the B-21's advanced technology required pilots who could think like engineers as well as aviators. But she'd also felt a familiar pang of frustration at the casual assumption that technical expertise and flying ability were somehow mutually exclusive. The truth was that Elena's technical knowledge made her a better pilot, not a worse one. She understood the aircraft's capabilities and limitations in ways that purely operational pilots couldn't match. She could anticipate problems before they occurred, could optimize performance in ways that maximized mission effectiveness, and could handle emergency situations with the kind of deep understanding that came from knowing exactly how each system functioned. But that expertise was seen as valuable only in a support role, not as qualification for operational assignments. Elena's living quarters at Whiteman were located in the base housing complex, a modest apartment that she shared with Major Jennifer Walsh, a logistics officer who managed supply chain operations for the entire base. Jennifer was pragmatic, funny, and completely bewildered by Elena's situation. "I don't understand why they won't let you fly," Jennifer had said during one of their evening conversations, settling into her favorite chair with a cup of coffee. "You're obviously qualified. You know those planes better than anyone. And you've got more flight experience than half the pilots on this base. What's the real reason?" Elena had considered several different answers before settling on the truth. "The real reason is that I don't fit the profile of what they think a B-21 pilot should look like. I'm too different, too risky, too much of a departure from the established pattern." Jennifer had shaken her head in disgust. "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The Air Force is supposed to be a meritocracy, right? Best person for the job gets the job? That's the theory," Elena had replied. "But in practice, there are a lot of other factors that influence personnel decisions. Politics, perception, risk management, cultural fit. Sometimes merit isn't enough." It was a conversation they'd had dozens of times, with variations and elaborations, but always reaching the same conclusion. Elena was trapped in a system that valued her contributions, but refused to acknowledge her full potential. The technical challenges of maintaining the B-21 fleet were becoming increasingly complex as the aircraft accumulated flight hours and operational experience. Each mission generated data that had to be analyzed, system performance that had to be evaluated, and maintenance requirements that had to be predicted. Elena had developed sophisticated algorithms for predicting component failures, had designed diagnostic procedures that could identify problems before they became critical, and had created maintenance schedules that maximized aircraft availability while minimizing costs. Her innovations had been adopted by other Air Force bases, had been incorporated into official maintenance protocols, and had saved taxpayers millions of dollars and reduced maintenance costs. But they'd also reinforced her reputation as a technical expert rather than a potential pilot, further cementing her role as someone who supported flight operations rather than someone who could execute them. Elena's family understood her frustration but struggled to offer useful advice. Her mother, Carmen Rodriguez, had worked as a nurse for 30 years and had faced her own challenges as a Latina woman in a profession that was often unwelcoming to minorities. But nursing was different from military aviation, and the barriers Elena faced were more subtle and more entrenched than anything Carmen had experienced. "Mija," Carmen would say during their weekly phone calls, "you're doing important work. Maybe that's enough for now. Maybe you need to be patient and wait for the right opportunity." Elena appreciated her mother's concern, but patience felt like surrender. She'd been patient for 18 months, had waited for opportunities that never materialized, had hoped that her performance would eventually be recognized in ways that led to flight assignments. But patience hadn't changed anything except her own level of frustration. Her grandmother, Maria, offered different advice. Now in her 70s and still sharp as a blade, Maria had watched Elena's career with the same careful attention she'd given to all her grandchildren's achievements. But she also understood struggle in ways that came from lived experience. "You remember what your grandfather used to say about flying?" Maria had asked during Elena's last visit home. "He said that the sky doesn't care about your paperwork, only about your skill. Sometimes you have to show people what you can do before they'll give you permission to do it." Elena had nodded, recognizing the truth in her grandmother's words, but also understanding the risks involved in challenging military authority. The Air Force wasn't a place where individual initiative was always rewarded, especially when that initiative challenged established hierarchies and procedures. But Maria's words had stayed with her, had planted a seed of possibility that grew stronger with each passing day of frustration and underutilization. The morning of March 15th began like any other morning at Whiteman Air Force Base. Elena arrived at 0530, coffee in hand, ready to review overnight maintenance reports and prepare for another day of supporting operations she wasn't allowed to participate in. The base was quiet, with only essential personnel on duty, the calm before the controlled chaos that would begin when the day shift arrived. Elena's first task was to review diagnostic data from the previous day's training flights. 3B-21 aircraft had been airborne for a total of 8 hours, conducting routine proficiency missions that kept the pilots current on their certifications. Each flight had generated gigabytes of data that needed to be analyzed for signs of developing problems or system anomalies. The data told a story of mechanical precision and human skill working together to achieve mission objectives. Engine performance was within normal parameters, stealth coatings were functioning properly, and all electronic systems had operated without significant issues. It was exactly the kind of routine success that the B-21 program had been designed to achieve. But Elena also noticed subtle patterns that suggested potential problems. Engine temperatures in aircraft tail number 890001 were running slightly higher than normal, probably indicating bearing wear that would require attention within the next 50 flight hours. The radar signature of aircraft 890003 showed minor fluctuations that might indicate coating degradation in the wing root area. And the flight control system in aircraft 89-007 had logged several minor corrections that suggested hydraulic pressure variations. None of these issues were critical, But all of them represented potential problems that could develop into serious failures if not addressed promptly. Elena made notes in her maintenance log, scheduled inspections for the affected aircraft, and prepared work orders for the technical crews who would perform the necessary repairs. It was detailed, important work that required expertise and careful attention to detail. It was also work that kept her safely away from the cockpit, analyzing other people's flights instead of conducting her own. Elena's phone buzzed with a text message from her grandmother. "Thinking about you today, Mia. Remember what your grandfather said about courage." She smiled, remembering childhood conversations about flying and dreaming and the importance of never giving up on goals that seemed impossible. Maria Rodriguez had immigrated to the United States with nothing but determination and hope, had built a life for her family through sheer force of will, and had never accepted that any dream was too big to pursue. Elena tucked the phone back into her pocket and returned to her analysis of flight data, unaware that in less than 3 hours, everything would change forever. The first indication that something was wrong came at 0847 hours when Elena's monitoring systems registered an anomalous signal from the Pacific Defense Network. She was reviewing hydraulic pressure readings from the previous night's maintenance checks when her primary console erupted in a cascade of red warning indicators that she'd never seen before outside of training scenarios. The signal originated from Station Echo 7, a classified monitoring post located on a remote island in North Pacific. Elena's security clearance allowed her access to the raw data feeds from early warning systems that most officers would never see, and what she was seeing now made her blood run cold. The electromagnetic signature was unlike anything in the threat database, a complex pattern that suggested advanced stealth technology operating in restricted airspace without authorization. Elena's fingers flew across her keyboard, pulling up additional sensor data from satellites and ground-based installations throughout the Pacific region. The picture that emerged was both impossible and terrifying. An unknown aircraft, displaying stealth characteristics that matched or exceeded those of the B-21 Raider, had penetrated American airspace and was heading directly toward the continental United States. The intruder's flight path was carefully calculated to avoid detection by conventional radar systems, following a route that exploited gaps in coverage between different monitoring stations. But Elena's access to integrated sensor networks allowed her to track the aircraft's progress with a precision that few other people on Earth could match. The intruder was approximately 4 hours from reaching the West Coast, flying at an altitude and speed that indicated sophisticated propulsion systems and advanced flight control technology. Elena immediately activated the secure communication protocol that connected her workstation directly to the Pentagon's Strategic Command Center. The encryption handshake took 30 seconds, during which she watched the unknown aircraft continue its steady progress toward American territory. When the connection was established, she found herself speaking directly to General Patricia Hayes, the Deputy Commander of Strategic Air Defense. "General Hayes, this is Major Rodriguez at Whiteman reporting a code red intrusion alert. I'm tracking an unidentified stealth aircraft approaching from the Northwest Pacific. Estimated time to territorial waters 4 hours." The response was immediate and sharp. "Rodriguez, are you certain of your assessment? We're showing no anomalous contacts on any of our primary systems." Elena's heart was pounding as she double-checked her analysis, confirming details that she hoped were somehow mistaken. "General, I'm tracking the contact through integrated sensor fusion from multiple platforms. The aircraft is exhibiting advanced stealth characteristics and following a penetration route that suggests detailed knowledge of our defense networks." There was a pause that felt like an eternity before General Hayes responded. "Major, I'm looking at the same data feeds you have access to, and I'm not seeing anything that correlates with your assessment. Are you absolutely certain you're not looking at a sensor malfunction or data processing error. Elena's training had prepared her for this moment, had taught her to trust her analysis even when others couldn't see what she was seeing. The unknown aircraft was using stealth technology that was specifically designed to defeat the detection methods that most military personnel relied upon. But Elena's deep understanding of sensor integration and signal processing allowed her to identify patterns that would be invisible to conventional analysis. General, I'm uploading my complete analysis to your secure terminal now. The contact is definitely real, definitely airborne, and definitely heading toward our airspace with hostile intent. Elena transmitted her data package and waited while General Hayes reviewed the evidence. The seconds stretched into minutes as she watched the unknown aircraft continue its relentless approach. Every moment of delay meant that the intruder was getting closer to American territory, closer to potential targets that could include military installations, population centers, or critical infrastructure. When General Hayes finally responded, her voice carried the weight of someone who understood the implications of what Elena had discovered. Major Rodriguez, your analysis is correct. We're now tracking the contact through alternative means, and it appears to be an advanced foreign prototype that we've never encountered before. This aircraft represents a direct threat to national security. Elena felt a mixture of vindication and terror as the reality of the situation became clear. An enemy nation had developed stealth technology that rivaled America's most advanced capabilities, and they were using it to conduct what could only be described as a test of American air defenses. The unknown aircraft was essentially invisible to conventional detection methods, capable of penetrating deep into American airspace without being detected or intercepted. General, what are our response options? Elena asked, already knowing that the answer would be complicated by the limitations of existing defense systems. That's the problem, Major. The aircraft stealth signature is so advanced that our conventional interceptors can't get a reliable target lock. F-22s and F-35s are essentially blind against this threat. We need something with comparable stealth capabilities and advanced sensor systems to conduct an intercept. Elena's mind was already racing through the possibilities, analyzing the tactical requirements for intercepting an aircraft that was essentially invisible to normal detection methods. The solution was obvious, but it was also complicated by operational realities that made immediate response nearly impossible. General, the B-21 Raider has the sensor capabilities and stealth characteristics needed for this mission. The aircraft's integrated detection systems could track and intercept the intruder. Agreed, Major. But we have a problem. Every qualified B-21 pilot in the Pacific theater is currently deployed on classified missions that can't be recalled in time. The nearest available pilot is 8 hours away, and we don't have 8 hours. Elena felt her heart stop as the implications became clear. The most advanced aircraft in the American arsenal was sitting in hangars less than a mile from her. Location, fully fueled and ready for immediate deployment. But without a qualified pilot, the B-21 Raiders were just extremely expensive pieces of stationary equipment. General, what about the pilots here at Whiteman? Surely someone is available for emergency deployment. Major, I'm looking at the duty roster right now. Colonel Mitchell is in Washington for congressional hearings. Major Thompson is on medical leave following a training accident. Captain Chun and the other qualified pilots are participating in a joint exercise in Alaska that can't be interrupted without compromising ongoing operations. Elena stared at her monitoring screens, watching the unknown aircraft continue its steady approach while America's most advanced interceptors sat useless in their hangars. The tactical situation was unprecedented. A direct threat to national security that could only be countered by technology that existed, but couldn't be deployed due to personnel shortages. General, I need to ask you something, and I need you to consider it seriously despite how it might sound. Go ahead, Major. I am fully qualified to pilot the B-21 Raider on this mission. I have over 2,000 flight hours in advanced aircraft, complete familiarity with all B-21 systems, and security clearances that exceed those of most operational pilots. I can be airborne in 30 minutes. The silence that followed was longer than Elena had expected, filled with the sound of her own heartbeat and the distant hum of electronic equipment. She was essentially asking permission to violate every protocol that governed B-21 operations, to circumvent chains of command that had been established to prevent exactly this kind of unauthorized activity. Major Rodriguez, you're not on the certified pilot roster for B-21 operations. I don't have authority to authorize an uncertified pilot for a combat mission. General, with respect, this isn't a normal combat mission. This is an emergency response to a direct threat that can't be countered by conventional means. The regulations exist to ensure mission success, not to prevent it. Elena could hear voices in the background as General Hayes consulted with other officers at Strategic Command. The conversation was muffled but urgent, with phrases like unprecedented situation and acceptable risk filtering through the secure connection. Every second of discussion meant that the unknown aircraft was getting closer to American airspace. Major, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I need completely honest answers. Do you have actual flight time in B-21 aircraft, or just simulator experience? General, I have 47 flight hours logged in actual B-21 aircraft during systems testing and evaluation flights. All of those flights were conducted under the supervision of certified instructors, but I was the primary pilot for all phases of flight. Do you have experience with the aircraft's combat systems and electronic warfare capabilities? Yes, General. I designed portions of the electronic warfare software and have conducted extensive testing of all defensive and offensive systems. Are you confident that you can successfully intercept and engage an advanced stealth aircraft using B-21 systems? Elena paused, considering the weight of her answer. This wasn't a question about technical capabilities or flight experience. This was a question about whether she was willing to stake her career, her reputation, and potentially her life on her belief in her own abilities. General, I am absolutely confident that I can execute this mission successfully. The B-21 sensor fusion capabilities will allow me to track the intruder even through its stealth systems. The aircraft's own stealth characteristics will prevent the enemy from detecting my approach until it's too late. This is exactly the kind of mission that the B-21 was designed to accomplish. Another pause, shorter this time, followed by the sound of rapid conversation in the background. Elena used the time to pull up technical specifications for the B-21 sensor systems, confirming details about detection ranges and tracking capabilities that would be critical for mission success. Major Rodriguez, I'm going to do something that violates about 16 different regulations. I'm authorizing you for immediate deployment on this mission under emergency protocols. You will be operating under direct orders from Strategic Command, and you will be personally responsible for mission success. Elena felt a surge of adrenaline that was part excitement and part terror. After 18 months of frustration and bureaucratic obstacles, she was finally being given the opportunity to prove herself in the cockpit of the world's most advanced military aircraft. But she was also being asked to intercept an unknown enemy in a situation that could easily result in international conflict or her own death. General, I understand the mission parameters and accept responsibility for successful execution. I'll be airborne in 25 minutes. Major, there's one more thing you need to know. The aircraft you're intercepting appears to be carrying some kind of advanced sensor package. Intelligence suggests it's conducting detailed reconnaissance of our defense networks, possibly in preparation for a larger operation. Your mission is to intercept, identify, and if necessary, prevent that aircraft from completing its intelligence gathering mission. Elena felt her mouth go dry as the full implications became clear. This wasn't just an intercept mission. This was potentially a combat engagement against an unknown enemy using untested tactics and weapon systems. The enemy aircraft had already demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything in the existing threat database, and she would be facing it alone in an aircraft that she'd never flown in actual combat conditions. "General, are you authorizing me to engage the target if it refuses to comply with intercept directives?" "Major, you are authorized to use whatever force is necessary to prevent that aircraft from completing its mission or escaping with intelligence that could compromise American security. The decision to engage will be yours based on tactical assessment of the situation." Elena terminated the secure connection and immediately began the pre-flight checklist for B-21 tail number 890001, the aircraft she knew best from her maintenance and testing work. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency across systems that she understood better than most people understood their own automobiles, but her mind was racing with the magnitude of what she was about to attempt. The B-21 Raider, designated 890001, was the most advanced aircraft in the fleet, equipped with the latest sensor upgrades and electronic warfare systems. Elena had personally supervised the installation of several key components and had conducted extensive testing of the aircraft's integrated systems. If any B-21 could successfully intercept an advanced stealth intruder, this was the one. Elena's first challenge was accessing the aircraft without triggering security protocols that would automatically notify Base Command of unauthorized activity. Her security clearance allowed her entry to the hangar, but actual aircraft activation required additional authorization codes that she technically didn't possess. However, her work on systems integration had given her knowledge of override procedures that were designed for emergency situations exactly like this one. The hangar was dimly lit and eerily quiet as Elena approached the B-21. The aircraft's triangular silhouette looked alien in the shadows, like something that had been designed by beings who understood flight in ways that humans were only beginning to comprehend. The stealth coating absorbed light in a way that made the aircraft's edges difficult to define, creating an optical illusion that suggested the machine was somehow larger and smaller than its actual dimensions. Elena's hands were steady as she entered the authorization codes that would activate the aircraft systems. The B-21 came alive with a soft hum of electronics and the subtle vibration of auxiliary power units spinning up to operational speed. Status displays throughout the cockpit began showing green indicators as each system completed its self-diagnostic routine. The pre-flight checklist for a B-21 normally took 45 minutes with a full crew. Elena completed it in 12 minutes. Her intimate knowledge of every system allowing her to streamline procedures without compromising safety or mission readiness. Engine startup was smooth and quiet, with the advanced turbofan engines producing minimal noise signatures that wouldn't alert base security to unauthorized activity. Elena's communication system crackled to life as she completed her final system checks. "Major Rodriguez, this is General Hayes. Are you ready for mission briefing and tactical updates?" "General, aircraft systems are nominal and ready for immediate departure. Request permission for emergency takeoff." "Major, the target aircraft has accelerated and is now approximately 2.5 hours from territorial waters. You need to intercept before it reaches the mainland and disappears into civilian air traffic, where engagement becomes impossible." Elena studied the tactical display showing the intruder's projected flight path. The enemy aircraft was following a route that would take it over major population centers, possibly using civilian air traffic as cover for its intelligence-gathering mission. Once the aircraft reached areas with heavy commercial aviation activity, intercept would become nearly impossible without risking civilian casualties. "General, I'm calculating intercept coordinates based on current flight paths. I should be able to establish contact approximately 100 miles off the coast, well away from civilian air traffic." "Understood. Understood. Major, Be advised that we're tracking additional anomalous signals that suggest the intruder may not be operating alone. There could be escort aircraft or supporting elements that you'll need to account for." Elena felt her pulse quicken as the tactical situation became more complex. A single intruder was challenging enough, but multiple advanced stealth aircraft operating in coordination represented a threat that could overwhelm even the B-21's advanced capabilities. She would need to rely on superior technology and tactical surprise to succeed against potentially superior numbers. "General, I'm requesting clearance for immediate departure. Every minute of delay reduces my tactical advantage and increases the risk of mission failure. Major Rodriguez, you are cleared for emergency departure. Execute your mission and bring that aircraft down before it can complete its intelligence gathering operation." Elena taxied the B-21 toward the active runway, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and terror that she'd never experienced before. The aircraft responded to her commands with the precision of a finely tuned instrument, every control input producing exactly the response she expected. This was the moment she'd been training for her entire career, the opportunity to prove that she belonged in the cockpit of America's most advanced military aircraft. The tower's voice crackled over the radio with obvious confusion and concern. "Aircraft approaching runway 27, you are not scheduled for departure. Identify yourself and state your intentions." Elena keyed her microphone with steady hands despite the magnitude of what she was about to do. "Tower, this is B-21 tail number 890001. Requesting immediate emergency departure under Strategic Command Authorization Alpha-7-7-Delta. The pause that followed was filled with the sound of Elena's own breathing and the quiet hum of the B-21 systems. She could imagine the chaos erupting in the control tower as air traffic controllers tried to process an unauthorized departure of the base's most classified aircraft. 890001, we have no record of scheduled departure for that aircraft. Request you return to hangar and contact base operations immediately." Elena was already positioning the aircraft for takeoff, her decision made and her commitment absolute. "Tower, I am operating under direct orders from Strategic Command in response to a national security emergency. I am departing immediately." The B-21 accelerated down the runway with the smooth power of its advanced engines, reaching takeoff speed in less than 3,000 feet. Elena pulled back on the controls and felt the aircraft lift into the gray March morning with the effortless grace that made stealth bombers seem to defy the laws of physics. Behind her, she could see vehicles racing across the base as security personnel responded to the unauthorized departure of their most valuable aircraft. As the B-21 climbed toward its operational altitude, Elena opened a secure channel to Strategic Command and began receiving real-time updates on the target aircraft's position and heading. The intruder was maintaining course and speed apparently, unaware that it had been detected and that an interceptor was already airborne. "Major Rodriguez, be advised that intelligence analysis suggests the target aircraft may be conducting signals reconnaissance on our air defense networks. It's possible that engagement will trigger automated defensive systems or communications with hostile forces." Elena acknowledged the warning while programming the B-21's navigation system for the intercept course. The flight to the intercept point would take approximately 40 minutes, during which she would need to remain undetected while positioning herself for optimal engagement geometry. The B-21's stealth characteristics would make her approach virtually invisible to the target aircraft until she was close enough to establish a positive identification and take whatever action was necessary to prevent the completion of its mission. But she would also be operating alone, without backup or support, against an unknown enemy with capabilities that remained largely mysterious. Elena set course for the intercept point and pushed the B-21 to its maximum sustainable speed, racing against time to prevent an intelligence gathering operation that could compromise American security for years to come. Behind her, Whiteman Air Force Base was undoubtedly erupting in chaos, as officers tried to explain how their most advanced aircraft had departed without authorization. But ahead of her was the most important mission of her career, the opportunity to prove that she deserved to be in this cockpit, and the chance to protect her country from a threat that no one else was positioned to counter. The sky stretched endlessly before her as the B-21 climbed toward the intercept altitude, its stealth systems active and its advanced sensors beginning to search for the enemy aircraft that was approaching. American airspace with unknown intentions and unprecedented capabilities. At 38,000 feet above the Pacific Ocean, Elena Rodriguez found herself in the most sophisticated aircraft ever built, hunting an enemy that represented everything the B-21 Raider had been designed to defeat. The irony wasn't lost on her that after 18 months of being denied flight status, she was now piloting the world's most advanced stealth bomber on a mission that could determine the future of American air superiority. The B-21's cockpit was a marvel of human engineering and technological integration. Every surface displayed critical information through high-resolution screens that could be reconfigured instantly based on mission requirements. The flight controls responded to Elena's touch with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel, translating her intentions into aircraft movement with no perceptible delay. But even more impressive were the sensor systems that allowed her to perceive the battle space in ways that previous generations of pilots could never have imagined. Elena's primary display showed a three-dimensional representation of the airspace around her, populated with data from dozens of different sensors that were constantly scanning for electromagnetic signatures, heat sources, and anomalous reflections that might indicate the presence of other aircraft. The system was designed to detect stealth aircraft by analyzing minute disturbances in the electromagnetic spectrum, variations in atmospheric pressure, and subtle changes in background radiation that conventional radar systems couldn't perceive. For the first 20 minutes of her flight toward the intercept point, Elena saw nothing unusual. The Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly beneath her, dotted with commercial shipping that appeared as slow-moving contacts on her navigation display. Civilian aircraft followed predictable routes between major airports, their transponder signals clearly identifying them as non-threatening commercial traffic. But somewhere in this vast expanse of sky and water, an enemy aircraft was approaching American territory with capabilities that matched or exceeded her own. Elena's communication system chimed with an encrypted message from Strategic Command, providing updated intelligence on the target aircraft. The analysis was both fascinating and terrifying in its implications. The enemy aircraft appeared to be using adaptive stealth technology that could modify its electromagnetic signature in real time, essentially changing its radar cross-section to match different types of aircraft or atmospheric conditions. This technology was years ahead of anything in the American arsenal, suggesting that an adversary had made breakthrough advances in materials, science, and electronic warfare that had gone undetected by intelligence services. More concerning was evidence that the aircraft was actively scanning American defense networks as it approached, using sophisticated electronic intelligence gathering equipment to map radar installations, communication frequencies, and response protocols. The enemy wasn't just testing American air defenses. They were conducting a comprehensive analysis of vulnerabilities that could be exploited in future operations. Elena adjusted her flight path based on updated tracking data that pinpointed the enemy aircraft's location with increasing precision. The B-21's sensor fusion capabilities were beginning to detect anomalies in atmospheric conditions that suggested the presence of a large aircraft operating with advanced stealth systems. The contacts were subtle, barely distinguishable from background noise, but Elena's training had taught her to recognize patterns that indicated artificial rather than natural phenomena. At 32 minutes into her flight, Elena's threat warning system registered the first definitive contact. The enemy aircraft appeared on her display as a ghostly outline that flickered in and out of detection, its stealth systems working to mask its presence, even from the B-21's advanced sensors. But Elena could see enough to confirm that she was dealing with an aircraft of unprecedented capabilities, something that represented a fundamental shift in the global balance of air power. The target aircraft was larger than she had expected, with a wingspan that suggested heavy payload capacity and extended range capabilities. Its flight profile indicated sophisticated autopilot systems that could maintain precise navigation without human intervention, and its stealth signature was constantly shifting in ways that suggested active electronic countermeasures designed to defeat exactly the kind of sensors that Elena was using to track it. Elena opened a secure channel to Strategic Command and transmitted her initial contact report. Control, this is Phantom 1 with first positive identification of target aircraft. Contact is confirmed as advanced stealth design with adaptive electronic warfare capabilities. Aircraft appears to be conducting active intelligence gathering on our defense networks. General Hayes' voice crackled back through the encrypted communication system with obvious tension and urgency. Phantom 1, you are authorized to attempt intercept and establish visual identification. Be advised that rules of engagement authorize defensive action if target demonstrates hostile intent. Elena acknowledged the transmission while calculating approach vectors that would bring her within visual range of the enemy aircraft without triggering its defensive systems. The B-21 stealth characteristics gave her a significant advantage in remaining undetected, but she would need to balance the need for positive identification with the risk of revealing her own presence too early in the engagement. The tactical situation was unlike anything in Elena's training or experience. She was essentially conducting a real-time test of American stealth technology against an unknown adversary with comparable capabilities. The outcome of this engagement would determine not only the success of her mission, but also the effectiveness of billions of dollars worth of defense research and development. Elena began her approach from above and behind the target aircraft, using the B-21's superior altitude capability to position herself in the enemy's blind spot. The closing rate was carefully controlled to minimize the risk of detection while allowing her to gather detailed intelligence on the aircraft's design and capabilities. As she drew closer, more details became visible through the B-21's advanced imaging systems. The enemy aircraft was unlike anything in existing intelligence databases. Its design incorporated stealth principles that were clearly derived from American research, but implemented in ways that suggested independent technological development rather than simple copying of existing designs. The aircraft's materials appeared to incorporate nanotechnology that could actively absorb and redirect electromagnetic energy, making it nearly invisible to conventional detection methods. More disturbing was evidence of sophisticated intelligence gathering equipment mounted throughout the aircraft structure. Elena could identify communication interception antennas, electronic warfare sensors, and what appeared to be equipment designed to map and analyze air defense networks in real time. This wasn't just a reconnaissance mission. It was a comprehensive intelligence operation that could provide an enemy with detailed knowledge of American defensive capabilities. Elena maneuvered the B-21 to within 2 miles of the target aircraft, close enough to obtain detailed imagery while remaining outside the range of most defensive systems. The enemy aircraft continued on its programmed course, apparently unaware that it had been detected and was being shadowed by the world's most advanced interceptor. Elena's detailed observation revealed that the aircraft was operating under complete autonomous control, with no visible signs of human crew members. This was essentially an unmanned stealth aircraft with capabilities that exceeded most manned fighters, representing a technological achievement that challenged fundamental assumptions about the future of aerial warfare. Elena transmitted her observations to Strategic Command while maintaining her shadowing position behind the target aircraft. Control, Target appears to be unmanned autonomous aircraft with advanced intelligence gathering capabilities. Aircraft is actively scanning our defense networks and appears to be mapping response protocols. General Hayes' response was immediate and decisive. Phantom 1, you are directed to terminate target aircraft's mission by whatever means necessary. This intelligence gathering operation represents a direct threat to national security that cannot be allowed to continue. Elena felt her heart rate accelerate as the mission parameters shifted from reconnaissance to active engagement. She was being asked to shoot down an enemy aircraft in what would be the first air-to-air combat engagement involving stealth technology against stealth technology. The tactical and strategic implications were enormous, but the immediate requirements were clear: prevent the enemy aircraft from completing its intelligence gathering mission. The B-21's weapon systems came online. With a soft chime as Elena activated the aircraft's offensive capabilities. The bomber was equipped with air-to-air missiles designed specifically for engaging advanced stealth targets, using multi-mode sensors that could track aircraft through electromagnetic signatures, infrared emissions, and atmospheric disturbances that conventional missiles couldn't detect. Elena selected her most advanced air-to-air weapon, a classified missile designated AIM-260D that incorporated artificial intelligence systems capable of adapting to enemy countermeasures in real time. The missile's guidance system was designed to maintain target lock even against aircraft, using the most sophisticated electronic warfare systems, making it the ideal weapon for engaging an adaptive stealth target. Elena achieved missile lock on the enemy aircraft and was preparing to engage when her threat warning system erupted in alarms that she'd never heard before. Her display filled with new contacts as 3 additional aircraft materialized around her position, their stealth systems deactivating simultaneously to reveal a coordinated trap that had been carefully planned and executed. The enemy aircraft she'd been tracking was bait, designed to lure American interceptors into a predetermined kill zone where they could be engaged by superior numbers. Elena found herself surrounded by 4 advanced stealth aircraft, each one equipped with weapon systems that were trained on her position. Elena's training took over as she executed defensive maneuvers that pushed the B-21 to the limits of its performance envelope. The aircraft responded with incredible agility for something so large, its fly-by-wire control systems automatically adjusting for optimal performance as Elena threw the bomber through violent evasive maneuvers designed to break enemy target locks. Enemy missiles filled the sky around her as all 4 aircraft engaged simultaneously. Elena deployed the B-21's full spectrum of defensive countermeasures, releasing clouds of chaff and flares while activating electronic warfare systems that jammed enemy guidance systems and created false targets to confuse incoming weapons. The B-21's defensive systems were everything Elena had hoped they would be. Advanced electronic warfare capabilities created multiple phantom targets that drew enemy missiles away from her actual position, while sophisticated chaff dispensers released materials that created false radar returns at precise intervals. But Elena knew that defensive measures alone wouldn't be sufficient against 4 coordinated attackers with advanced weapons systems. Elena selected multiple targets and began engaging with rapid-fire missile launches that utilized the B-21's advanced fire control systems. Her first missile destroyed one of the enemy aircraft in a brilliant explosion that lit up the Pacific sky, proving that American weapons could defeat the enemy's stealth technology when properly employed. The second engagement was more challenging as the enemy aircraft began coordinated, evasive maneuvers while maintaining their attack on Elena's position. Elena found herself in a 3-dimensional chess match conducted at supersonic speeds, with each move potentially determining the outcome of the engagement and the success of her mission. Elena's second missile achieved a direct hit on the lead enemy aircraft, eliminating the threat while providing valuable intelligence on the effectiveness of American weapons against advanced stealth targets. But the remaining 2 aircraft continued their attack with weapons that demonstrated capabilities beyond anything in existing threat assessments. Elena executed a complex defensive maneuver that utilized the B-21's thrust vectoring capabilities to achieve flight profiles that would be impossible for conventional aircraft. The bomber's advanced flight control systems allowed her to maintain controlled flight while pulling gravitational forces that would have disabled most pilots, but Elena's physical conditioning and mental preparation allowed her to maintain tactical awareness throughout the engagement. The 3rd enemy aircraft fell to Elena's defensive fire after a prolonged engagement that tested both aircraft to their limits. Elena's superior training and intimate knowledge of the B-21's capabilities gave her the edge she needed to outmaneuver an aircraft that was potentially superior in raw performance characteristics. The final enemy aircraft proved to be the most challenging opponent, employing tactics that suggested human rather than artificial intelligence guidance. This aircraft maneuvered with unpredictable patterns that avoided Elena's missile locks while maintaining offensive pressure that forced her into increasingly desperate defensive actions. Elena realized that she was fighting not just advanced technology but also a skilled pilot who understood stealth combat tactics as well as she did. The engagement became a test of skill, training, and determination rather than simply a comparison of technological capabilities. The battle raged across 50 miles of Pacific sky as both aircraft pushed their stealth systems and weapons to maximum effectiveness. Elena found herself drawing on every aspect of her training, every hour of simulator time, and every piece of technical knowledge she'd accumulated during her years of studying advanced aircraft systems. Elena's decisive advantage came from her deep understanding of the B-21's integrated systems and her ability to coordinate defensive and offensive actions in ways that maximize the aircraft's effectiveness. She was able to use the bomber's electronic warfare capabilities to create targeting opportunities while simultaneously employing its defensive systems to avoid enemy fire. Elena's final missile shot destroyed the last enemy aircraft in an engagement that lasted less than 8 minutes but felt like hours of concentrated combat. The Pacific sky was suddenly quiet except for the steady sound of the B-21's engines and Elena's own rapid breathing as she realized that she had successfully defeated 4 advanced enemy aircraft in single combat. Elena transmitted her engagement report to Strategic Command while conducting a detailed assessment of the B-21 systems and remaining capabilities. The aircraft had performed flawlessly throughout the engagement, with all systems operating within normal parameters despite the extreme stress of high-speed combat maneuvering. Control, this is Phantom 1 reporting successful engagement of 4 enemy stealth aircraft. All targets destroyed, mission objectives achieved. Aircraft systems nominal and ready for return to base. General Hayes' voice carried obvious relief and amazement as she responded to Elena's report. Phantom 1, outstanding performance. You have successfully defeated the most advanced threat we've ever encountered and prevented a major intelligence compromise. You are cleared to return to base immediately. Elena set course for Whiteman Air Force Base while reviewing the tactical data from her engagement. The B-21 had proven itself capable of defeating advanced stealth threats in actual combat, validating years of research and development while demonstrating the effectiveness of American defensive technology against the most sophisticated adversaries. More importantly, Elena had proven to herself and to Strategic Command that she possessed the skill, training, and judgment necessary to pilot America's most advanced aircraft in the most challenging combat situations. She had faced an unprecedented threat and emerged victorious through a combination of superior technology, excellent training, and personal determination that refused to accept defeat. The flight back to Whiteman gave Elena time to process what she had accomplished and what it meant for her future in the Air Force. She had violated numerous regulations and protocols to conduct an unauthorized mission, but she had also prevented a major intelligence compromise and successfully tested American stealth technology against the most advanced enemy systems ever encountered. Elena knew that landing at Whiteman would begin a new chapter in her career, one that would either result in court-martial and disgrace or recognition and advancement to the flight status she had been seeking for so long. But she also knew that she had made the right decision, that she had acted in the best interests of national security when the established system had failed to respond effectively to an unprecedented threat. As the B-21 descended toward Missouri airspace, Elena could see military vehicles surrounding the runway at Whiteman Air Force Base. Her unauthorized departure had obviously triggered massive security protocols, and her return would be met by officers who would demand explanations for actions that had never been contemplated in any regulation or procedure manual. But Elena was returning as a combat veteran who had successfully engaged and defeated the most advanced enemy aircraft ever encountered. She had proven that the B-21 Raider was everything its designers had promised and more, and she had demonstrated that American pilots could successfully employ stealth technology against equally advanced adversaries. The runway at Whiteman appeared ahead of her as Elena began her final approach, knowing that her landing would mark the end of one phase of her career and the beginning of something entirely new. Behind her, 4 enemy aircraft had been destroyed, and a major intelligence operation had been prevented. Ahead of her, senior officers were waiting to determine whether her actions represented heroism or insubordination. Elena touched down at Whiteman Air Force Base with the same precision she had demonstrated throughout her combat mission, bringing the B-21 to a smooth landing that showcased her skill as a pilot and her mastery of the world's most advanced aircraft. The mission was complete, the threat had been eliminated, and Elena Rodriguez had finally proven that she belonged in the cockpit of America's most sophisticated military aircraft. Elena Rodriguez brought the B-21 Raider to a perfect landing on runway 27 at Whiteman Air Force Base, her hands steady on the controls despite the magnitude of what awaited her on the ground. The aircraft touched down with barely a whisper, its advanced landing systems absorbing the impact with the same technological precision that had made her combat mission possible. But as she taxied toward the designated parking area, Elena could see that her return was being met with a reception unlike anything she had ever witnessed. 12 black SUVs surrounded the aircraft's parking position, their occupants remaining inside with engines running as if prepared for immediate departure. Military police vehicles formed a secondary perimeter, their light bars casting red and blue reflections across the hangar walls. Most conspicuous of all was a convoy of official vehicles bearing Pentagon license plates, including a limousine that could only belong to someone with the highest levels of authority within the Department of Defense. Elena completed her shutdown checklist with methodical precision, each switch and control positioned exactly as specified in procedures she had memorized years earlier. The B-21 systems powered down in sequence, the soft hum of electronics fading to silence as the world's most advanced aircraft returned to dormancy. But Elena's mind was racing with questions about what would happen next, what consequences she would face for her unauthorized mission, and whether her combat success would be enough to justify her violation of countless regulations. Through the cockpit windows, Elena could see figures emerging from the government vehicles, their dark suits and serious expressions, suggesting that this debriefing would involve officials whose authority extended far beyond Whiteman Air Force Base. Among them, she recognized General Patricia Hayes from her official photographs, the same officer who had authorized her mission from Strategic Command. But there were others whose identity she couldn't determine, officials whose presence suggested that her actions had attracted attention at the highest levels of government. Elena opened the cockpit canopy and climbed down from the aircraft, her flight suit still bearing the evidence of high-stress combat operations. Her legs felt unsteady after hours of high-G maneuvering, but her resolve remained firm as she prepared to face whatever consequences awaited her. She had accomplished her mission, had protected national security when the established system had failed, and had proven capabilities that had been dismissed for too long. General Hayes approached first, her expression unreadable as she stopped, precisely 3 feet from Elena's position. Behind her, a cluster of officials in civilian clothing maintained respectful distance, while obviously analyzing every detail of Elena's appearance and demeanor. Elena came to attention and rendered a proper salute, acknowledging both General Hayes' rank and the gravity of the situation. "Major Rodriguez," General Hayes began, her voice carrying across the quiet hangar with unmistakable authority. "You have conducted an unauthorized flight operation that violated multiple regulations and protocols. You departed this base without proper clearance, engaged in combat operations without official authorization, and returned with an aircraft that was not officially assigned to your command." Elena maintained her position of attention while formulating her response. The charges were accurate in their technical details, but they ignored the context that had made her actions necessary and justified. "General Hayes, I conducted emergency operations under direct orders from Strategic Command in response to an imminent threat to national security. My actions were undertaken when no authorized personnel were available to respond to the crisis." One of the civilian officials stepped forward, a man in his 60s whose bearing suggested extensive military experience despite his current civilian status. Elena didn't recognize him, but the deference shown by other officials indicated someone with considerable authority within the defense establishment. He studied Elena with eyes that had obviously seen combat, measuring her with the kind of assessment that comes from personal experience, rather than bureaucratic procedure. "Major Rodriguez, I am Secretary of Defense William Harrison. I've been monitoring your mission from the Pentagon Situation Room, and I've reviewed the tactical data from your engagement with enemy aircraft. Your performance today has implications that extend far beyond this base or even this service branch." Elena felt her heart rate increase as she realized that her unauthorized mission had attracted attention from the highest levels of the defense establishment. Secretary Harrison's presence indicated that her actions were being evaluated in the context of national security policy rather than simply military discipline. The outcome of this debriefing could determine not only her own future but also broader questions about personnel policies and operational procedures. Secretary Harrison continued his assessment, while other officials maintained their respectful silence. "Major, according to the data we've reviewed, you successfully engaged and destroyed 4 advanced enemy aircraft using systems and tactics that represent the most sophisticated aerial combat ever conducted. You accomplished this mission alone, without backup or support, against adversaries whose capabilities exceeded our most optimistic threat assessments." Elena acknowledged the Secretary's statement while maintaining her formal posture. "Mr. Secretary, I executed the mission using standard tactics and procedures adapted for the specific threat environment. The B-21 systems performed exactly as designed, and my training provided the foundation for successful engagement." Another figure emerged from the group of officials, an older woman whose uniform identified her as Admiral Catherine Morrison, Chief of Naval Operations. Elena recognized her from official portraits, but seeing her in person emphasized the extraordinary nature of this gathering. Admiral Morrison's presence suggested that Elena's mission had implications for all service branches, not just the Air Force. Admiral Morrison's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected thousands of lives. "Major Rodriguez, the intelligence data recovered from your engagement indicates that we faced a coordinated attack by aircraft whose technology was years ahead of our current threat assessments. The enemy's capabilities in stealth design, electronic warfare, and autonomous flight systems represent advances that could have shifted the global balance of power. Elena processed this information while maintaining her formal stance, understanding that her mission had revealed threats that extended far beyond a simple intelligence-gathering operation. The enemy aircraft she had encountered represented technological capabilities that could challenge American air superiority in ways that previous adversaries had never been able to achieve. General Hayes resumed her role in the debriefing, her expression softening slightly as she addressed the broader implications of Elena's actions. Major, your unauthorized departure from this base triggered security protocols that required explanations to congressional leadership, international allies, and defense contractors whose projects depend on B-21 operational security. Your actions could have compromised classified programs worth billions of dollars. Elena understood the gravity of these concerns, while also recognizing that they reflected systemic problems that had made her unauthorized action necessary. General, I apologize for any complications my actions may have caused. However, the enemy aircraft I engaged were conducting intelligence operations that could have compromised those same programs through successful penetration of our defense networks. Secretary Harrison stepped closer to Elena, his expression indicating that he was reaching conclusions that would determine the direction of this entire discussion. Major Rodriguez, the tactical success of your mission has been confirmed by analysis of debris recovered from the engagement site. The enemy aircraft incorporated technology that represents a fundamental threat to American air superiority. Your successful engagement proved that our own technology and training are capable of meeting this challenge. Elena felt a mixture of relief and apprehension as she recognized that the focus was shifting from disciplinary action to strategic assessment. Her violation of regulations was being weighed against the national security implications of her missions, success, and the intelligence value of her engagement with advanced enemy systems. Admiral Morrison consulted a tablet device before addressing Elena directly. Major, intelligence analysis of the enemy aircraft debris has revealed technology transfer patterns that suggest a coordinated effort to challenge American aerospace superiority. Your engagement provided critical data that will inform defense planning for years to come. Elena acknowledged this information while wondering about her own future within an organization that seemed to value her contributions while questioning her authority to make the decisions that had led to those contributions. Her success in combat had validated her capabilities, but her unauthorized actions had violated principles of military discipline that couldn't be easily dismissed. Secretary Harrison seemed to read Elena's thoughts as he prepared to address the central question underlying this entire debriefing. Major Rodriguez, your actions today have forced us to confront fundamental questions about personnel policies, operational procedures, and the criteria we use to evaluate combat readiness. You have demonstrated capabilities that were overlooked by the assignment process that kept you in a support role. Elena maintained her formal posture while feeling a surge of hope that her performance might finally lead to recognition of her qualifications. Mr. Secretary, I have always believed that my training and experience qualified me for operational assignments. Today's mission provided an opportunity to demonstrate those capabilities under actual combat conditions. General Hayes exchanged glances with Secretary Harrison before addressing Elena with what appeared to be carefully prepared remarks. Major Rodriguez, the success of your mission has been noted at the highest levels of government. Your performance under combat conditions exceeded expectations and provided valuable intelligence that will enhance national security. Elena felt her pulse quicken as she sensed that this debriefing was moving toward conclusions that could dramatically alter her career trajectory. The presence of such high-ranking officials suggested that decisions were being made that extended far beyond typical personnel actions. Secretary Harrison removed a folder from his briefcase and consulted documents, whose classification markings indicated the highest levels of security. Major Rodriguez, I am here today to inform you of personnel actions that have been approved by the Chief of Staff of the Air Force and confirmed by the Secretary of the Air Force. Elena's heart was pounding as she realized that major career decisions were about to be announced. The formal nature of Secretary Harrison's presentation suggested that these weren't routine personnel actions but rather significant changes that reflected her demonstrated capabilities. Major Rodriguez, effective immediately, you are assigned to the 509th Bomb Wing as a qualified B-21 Raider pilot with full operational status. Your technical qualifications and combat performance have earned you a position among the most elite pilots in the United States Air Force. Elena felt tears forming in her eyes as she absorbed the magnitude of what she was hearing. After 18 months of frustration and bureaucratic obstacles, she was finally being recognized for her actual capabilities rather than arbitrary limitations imposed by systemic bias and institutional resistance to change. Admiral Morrison stepped forward with her own announcement that indicated the broader implications of Elena's recognition. Major Rodriguez, your combat performance has also earned you assignment to a Joint Service Task Force responsible for Corps developing tactics and procedures for engaging advanced stealth threats. This assignment recognizes your expertise in both technology and combat operations. Elena struggled to maintain her composure as she realized that her unauthorized mission had not only proven her individual capabilities, but had also opened opportunities that extended far beyond her original goals. She was being offered the chance to shape the future of aerial combat rather than simply participating in existing programs. Secretary Harrison's final announcement carried implications that Elena hadn't dared to imagine. Major Rodriguez, in recognition of your exceptional performance under combat conditions and your contributions to national security, you are hereby promoted to the rank of Lieutenant Colonel, effective immediately. Elena's tears flowed freely as she realized that her career had been transformed in ways that exceeded her most optimistic hopes. The promotion represented not only personal recognition but also validation of principles that she had maintained throughout years of professional frustration. General Hayes stepped forward with a presentation case containing Elena's new rank insignia and pilot wings. Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez, these symbols represent your earned place among the most qualified and trusted officers in the United States Air Force. Your performance today has proven that merit and capability are the only criteria that truly matter. Elena accepted the presentation case with hands that trembled slightly from emotion and exhaustion. The weight of the insignia felt significant, not just as metal and cloth, but as symbols of recognition that had been too long denied, and finally earned through performance that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. Admiral Morrison's closing remarks emphasized the broader significance of Elena's recognition. Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez, your assignment to operational status sends a clear message that the United States military values capability over convention, performance over prejudice, and merit over tradition. You have earned your place through skill and courage that serve as an example for all military personnel. Elena rendered a salute to the assembled officials while struggling to process the magnitude of how completely her situation had changed. Hours earlier, she had been a frustrated support officer watching others fly missions she was qualified to execute. Now she was a combat veteran with operational status and responsibilities that reflected her true capabilities. Secretary Harrison's final words carried implications that extended beyond Elena's individual situation. Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez, your actions today have demonstrated that American military personnel can meet any challenge when they are empowered to use their full capabilities. Your success reflects the strength of our training, the effectiveness of our technology, and the courage of individuals who refuse to accept artificial limitations. Elena's grandmother's words echoed in her memory, as she realized that she had finally achieved the recognition that Maria Rodriguez had predicted so many years earlier. The sky had indeed proven that it cared only about courage and capability, not about gender or background or institutional bias. As the official gathering dispersed and Elena prepared to begin her new role as an operational B-21 pilot, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The unauthorized mission that could have ended her career had instead validated everything she had believed about her own capabilities and the importance of merit-based evaluation. Elena walked toward the B-21 that would now be officially assigned to her command, her new rank insignia reflecting the hangar lights. As she prepared to begin a career that would finally utilize her full potential, behind her, the officials who had recognized her performance were already planning how her success could be replicated throughout the military establishment. The aircraft that had been forbidden to her for so long was now officially under her command, a symbol of recognition that had been earned through performance under the most challenging conditions imaginable. Elena climbed into the cockpit that was now officially hers, her hands resting on controls that she would operate as a recognized pilot rather than a hidden support officer. As Elena began planning her first official mission as a B-21 pilot, she thought about all the other qualified personnel who might be overlooked by systems that valued conformity over capability. Her success had proven that exceptional performance could overcome institutional barriers, but it had also highlighted the importance of creating opportunities for merit to be recognized and rewarded. The sun was setting over Missouri as Elena completed her initial planning for operations that would utilize her full range of capabilities. Her unauthorized mission had ended with recognition that exceeded her most optimistic expectations, validating years of preparation and opening opportunities that would define the rest of her career. Lieutenant Colonel Elena Rodriguez, B-21 Raider pilot, looked toward a future that would be shaped by performance rather than prejudice, capability rather than convention, and merit rather than tradition. Her journey from overlooked support officer to recognized combat pilot had proven that the sky truly belonged to those brave enough to claim it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.